Welcome to the Mid-Hudson Library System's Engage webinar series. This is Rebecca Smith-Aldridge, Mid-Hudson Library System's Coordinator for Library Sustainability. We're so pleased to bring you another installment of this series, which shines a spotlight on libraries doing great work to engage with their communities to strengthen both their library and their community at the same time. Today we're joined by Michelle Capozella and Alice Walsh from the Mahopac Public Library. This is a dynamic duo who has done some excellent work along with their teammates at the Mahopac Public Library to connect with their community through the process they were decided to use to do their long-range plan. So we all know that to have a great strategic plan or a great long-range plan, you need to actually talk to your community about what's important to them. So Alice and Michelle and the other trustees and some of the staff got together and figured out a stronger way to connect with their community moving forward to build their next plan. So Michelle and Alice, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for asking us.
Well, you guys are really trailblazers here in Mid-Hudson. You're only the third library to use this technique moving forward, so we're very curious to hear how it went for you. But before we get started, we want to give everyone a sense of the type of community that you're helping to serve. So Alice, could you tell us a little bit about Mahopac?
Yes, Mahopac is a small and vibrant community. It's a suburb about 50 miles north of New York City. And when I say small, it's small both geographically and also in terms of population. There are fewer than 10,000 people who live here. It has full-time residents as well as weekenders. It has lifelong multi-generation families and also many new residents. And most new residents are raising their families here. There's a small downtown, and the library is right in the middle of downtown. There are locally owned small businesses and some restaurant chains, but there are no big box stores. So parts of town still have a very rural feel, and there's great natural beauty. There are a number of lakes and reservoirs. The largest lake is Lake Mahopac, which is a recreation destination.
Good, you got a little bit of everything there in Mahopac.
Yes, yeah, it's a great place to live.
Oh, very cool. So, Michelle, when you and your board invited me to come down and speak to them about how to do the next plan, one of the things we discussed was the American Library Association's Libraries Transform Communities methodology. What about this methodology appealed to you?
Well, the Libraries Transform Communities' main idea is that libraries today are more about what they do for and with people, transforming lives in small and big ways, about what libraries offer and how to develop partnerships in the community. And the thing that really appealed to us is the goal is to really position libraries as decision makers. So that way when decisions are being made in the community, libraries are thought of as people to invite to the table to help make these decisions in the community. Previously, I've been working in libraries for over 30 years, and the idea had always been that the library was the heart of the community. And when you do long-range plans, you go out to the community and you say, what do you like about the library? What can the library do for you? Whereas now the new idea is that the community is really the heart of the library, and that more accurately reflects the role that the modern library has in society today.
That's a great line, Michelle, that the community is at the heart of your library. And how would you know what the heart of the library needs unless you talk to them, right? So
Correct.
One of the main activities in this methodology is actually having conversations with the community. There's a whole workbook that helps guide a library to do this kind of work. So Alice, could you help everyone understand what is an actual community conversation in the construct of the Libraries Transforming Communities program?
So community conversations are similar to what used to be called focus groups, but better. Community conversations are a way to draw people into discussion, into conversation about something that they all care about, which is their community. Everyone has a stake in their community. Everyone has aspirations for their community. So we ask the participants to share those aspirations, why those aspirations are important to them. How is that different from the way things are now? What is standing in the way of achieving those aspirations? And how can the community as a whole, how can individuals and groups in the community make progress towards those aspirations. Then when we gather that information, the library board and staff can then extrapolate from what we learned at the community conversations when we design our long-range plan for the library. So what we learn in the community conversations might affect our recommendations about the collection, about programs, about hours, about staffing, and any other issues having to do with the library and what we provide and where we fit in.
Very cool. So it's really flipping that old school question of what should the library do for you, and instead figuring out what they're the experts in, which is living in the community. So you can use library science to figure out what's going to be most important to your community to work on. I love how that flips the script on how libraries do planning. So
Exactly.
these conversations are really like the heart of your planning process. So Michelle, how did you decide who to invite to these conversations?
Well, the first thing we did is we got the long-range planning committee of the board, and we invited members of the board or on the long-range planning committee. We got a member of the Friends group who happens to be the Friends of Mahopac Library president. We have a former board member, and we were lucky enough to have the Putnam County executive, Mary Ellen Odell. She had some time to be on our committee. So we identified these key members of the community and some key groups such as parents with young children that we really wanted to invite to come to these community conversations. So some other target participants were like groups. We wanted to talk to library users, but we also wanted to talk to non-users, local organizations that regularly use the library's meeting room, longtime residents, full-time residents, wanted to talk to weekenders, religious leaders, educators, nonprofit leaders, law enforcement, and government leaders. So along with the remaining members of the board, we sent personal invitations to people that we identified, inviting them to attend community conversations. So we advertised on the library's website and in local newspapers for other participants as well, because we wanted to have anybody who was interested in participating be able to join a community conversation. But I really think it was these personal invitations from people who knew the members that we wanted to speak to that really made a difference, because and really I give credit to the woman Laura does our website. She made it very easy. Right on the front of the website we had a big button that said community conversations that took you right to the registration for the conversation. So we wanted to make it really as easy as possible for people to register when they wanted to.
Very cool. I love how you did double duty with your invitations to not only get a broad cross-section of the community, FaceTime with them, but also make sure everyone in the community knew you were doing this kind of work to demonstrate how transparent you were being about where input was coming from and that all were welcomed. That's really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So Alice, once you had people in the room, who actually ran those conversations? Did you have a facilitator? And what was that experience like for everyone?
So the conversations were facilitated by either myself or by Scott, who's another board member serving on the Long Range Planning Committee. Michelle ran the conversation that was conducted with the staff. And we were trained by you, Rebecca. And after we observed you facilitate the first community conversation, we were ready to go. The format is straightforward, and the questions that were provided to us we found to be very iterative, so they flowed naturally from one to the next, and they made the whole conversation feel very natural from beginning to end. The participants were open. They were open to expressing their opinions. They were respectful of differing opinions. We found that the community conversations were a safe environment for the participants to express their opinions. It was a non-judgmental environment. So the conversations were very rewarding, very informative. Everybody in the room was engaged in active listening, which was great. You know, that's something that you don't see all the time in life, people actively listening and acknowledging each other. So people were learning from each other's experiences and each other's opinions. We found that each community conversation was sort of a microcosm of the larger community, and it was actually fascinating to see that the same themes began to emerge from the various groups.
Oh, so now we're getting to the meat of this about what did you learn from the conversation. So, Michelle, I wonder if you would be willing to do a little reveal of what you learned through those conversations.
Sure. Well, themes emerged through all the conversations, which was interesting. Well, we learned that people really enjoy living in Mahopac. I think mostly because it's situated close to New York City, but it still retains a somewhat rural feel. There's a lot of houses are situated on pretty big pieces of land. The lakes add to that. There are members of the community who have left to go to school, but then who have returned to Mahopac to raise their families. So people do come back. People highly value events that happen every year, such as there's an annual street fair in October where a lot of community organizations set up. There's a Columbus Day parade every year, and this brings people really like these things that bring members of the community together, like different ages, different different groups of people together. We also learned that many people don't really know their neighbors, but they would really like to. People are busy and they don't have as much time to really get to know people. They want to know what's going on and they want to feel involved and connected, but they don't feel that way now. They would also like a community-wide calendar. That came up again and again. People would like to know, even at the library, people who have used the library pretty regularly still didn't know the kind of things that happen here, which is kind of frustrating, but it was very eye-opening and a good thing for us to know. So that's something we'll concentrate on, figuring out how to get that out. And they also want more things for teens and young adults to do so that they'll stay here or they'll return after college.
It's like they're really seeking a sense of community, that you find a role for the library in helping to create that.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. So, Alice, as a trustee who is really looking to get that feedback you need to inform decisions at the board table and to be strategic in the library's future, when you take a look back on this process that you used, what kind of feedback did you receive from those who attended the conversations? Like, did they appreciate being invited?
Yes, they appreciated being invited. They appreciated that we valued their opinions. They immediately felt the importance of what was happening in the room. They were curious about how the library would use the information that we got from the community conversations. They wanted to know when they would hear back. So we made sure that we told every group at the end of the conversation that this is the first step in a process, and the process would take a number of months, and that they shouldn't expect to hear back from us immediately, but that we would add what we learned from them to the other information that we will gather through online and print surveys, in addition to statistical data that we're collecting, and that in a few months we would announce our plan, and that this is a very important part of that process. I think everybody was very grateful for having the opportunity to participate and to have their opinions heard.
Very cool. It seems like you create a very inclusive environment for these conversations to take place in. So now, Alice, you just reflected back on that. Michelle, I wonder if I could ask you to reflect back on this. Would you recommend this process to other libraries?
Absolutely, 100%. It was really wonderful to hear, to be able to sit amongst a group of people and just hear everybody's input. It was also interesting to have it reinforced that, again, as I've said before, that people, even those who use the library on a regular basis, still don't know all of the things that we offer. And there were so many times when we were sitting there and, Alice and I would look at each other kind of like, we do that already. But you kind of just sit back and say, okay, we'll take note of that. And although we're doing the conversations as part of the long-range plan, there were many things that came out of the conversations that we can act upon immediately. So one of the things we're doing is we're reorganizing our first floor to have more seating space. So that way we can kind of foster that sense of community. So when people are here and they meet their neighbor, they can just kind of plop themselves down on some comfortable seating and they can just, talk like it's their living room. We want to make more of a living room kind of feel. We also think that people enjoyed speaking with other community members whom they might not have known, which I think just having the community conversations fostered a sense of community with having everybody, in the same room talking about the same thing. And again, a lot of the same things came up. So there was a sense of camaraderie there. And then really a big thank you to you guys, to you, Rebecca, and to the staff at Mid-Hudson for assisting us in this process, because I think your assistance really helped us to get the most out of the process as possible and really to make everything go smoothly. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you guys.
Yeah,
Oh,
I would echo that. Your assistance was invaluable. We would not have been able to do it without you.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that, but I really have to put that one back on you because I think being brave enough to try this was really exciting to see you guys come together and agree that you wanted to turn outwards and you really wanted to hear from the community rather than trying to guess what they might like or need. So I just think you guys did a really solid step forward to, springboard into the future for your library. Not only are you going to have a stronger plan for it, but it seemed like you made a lot of new connections and really raised your profile in the community through the process itself, let alone what's going to come next, which is pretty exciting in your plan.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Very cool. So I'm sorry, I flipped by this slide here, but for anyone who's interested in learning more, this is actually a free program through the American Library Association, and the URL is at the bottom, ala.org/transforming/libraries/libraries transforming communities. It's a little long, but we're librarians, we can figure it out. But as was said, this is kind of like a turnkey program. It's handed to you. If you need consulting help with it, I'm here to help you in the Mid-Hudson Library System, but also the workbooks that are available through the program do take you step by step through the process. They give you the questions. There's tips for facilitation and note taking. So it's really a DIY kind of program that can strengthen your library for years to come. So before we go, I just want to thank Michelle and Alice once again for taking the time to share this story. I think you guys have really trailblazed a new way forward in library planning for our region, and we're excited to see what comes next, not only for your libraries, but other libraries who are inspired by what you've done here.
Me too.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Oh, thank you guys so much.